Hey guys, welcome to Jay Hauser Writes. It is the middle of the year. How did that happen? So I had started filming individual book review videos and I realized that they were getting really long, and also I don't know how many people care, but I figured, maybe a couple times a year I could do just a recap of books I've read and my thoughts on them, recommendations, and go from there. Now this is going to be traditionally published books and kind of more well-known ones. These are all admittedly quite a bit older, not new releases, but maybe even one could say fresh classics. I don't know how they classify these things. I will be doing separate videos on indie publishers, smaller books. Those will be individual reviews. I've actually started reading one for one of you per your request. So I will be doing those separately. I think that would be a fun way to support other people like myself that are trying to get their works out there and noticed. But for now, let's get into the books that I have read for the first part of 2021. Now, I will say read loosely because these were audiobooks, and I think I'm going to count audiobooks as read. It's different for everyone. We all have our own reasons. I have ADHD and I struggle to sometimes just focus. But especially this year I moved, so I used audiobooks while I was packing, kind of multitask, have that sound in the background, get to experience it without just sitting the whole time. And also while moving, I sustained a head injury that required me to take time off of work, have physical therapy, go to many doctor's appointments, and I would have debilitating headaches where I literally could just lay there and do nothing. So I listened to books when I wasn't sleeping. So these are all audiobooks. I have not actually read anything, I don't think, that has not been an audiobook or like a marketing book. I'm not going to do a review on that. That's not very exciting. Or manuscripts for other authors. So I have done some of those things, but we're not going to do that. This is a super long introduction. Let's get into the books. Now, some of these we're going to talk. I finished all of the books, but I DNF'd some of the series. Let's talk about first Mistborn. Everyone says if you want to start into fantasy, Brandon Sanderson is the man, and that Mistborn is a great place to start. I struggled with Mistborn, especially books 1 and 2, because I don't like things that dark, and they were dark. I'm not a dark fantasy person. I need happier endings. So let's just start off there, and very early on in the first book that we're going to talk about that kind of stuff. We're going to talk about rape and murder as being a common thing and good times. But I did press forward in the series, and ironically, as I finished the third book, I was like, this kind of reminds me of my trilogy that I'm about to put out right now, in the way that book 1 is a lot of discover the magic, discover yourself. Book 2 has more political intrigue. Book 3 has discover the secrets of the magic. And I found some things, not that I can say, I'm no Brandon Sanderson. I'm just me. But I will say the magic system was cool. I'm gonna try to make this all spoiler free. So in book 1, I found Marsh's kind of reveal interesting. That did surprise me, though I found the Renew reveal completely predictable, and I found that I wasn't convinced by the love interest in multiple ways. Brandon Sanderson falls into what I find many male authors fall into, is the romance is crap. It's barely there, and a character who has been emotionally scarred and not knowing what it means to be loved, changing to accepting and trusting is one thing, but then all of a sudden being like, this is love. I'm like, are you sure? How would you know? Have you even held hands? So I found that a bit of a stretch. I think kind of the red herring that he was going for in that direction did not convince me at all. I never questioned that. And I found the ending too easy for the love interest to gain what they gained. I will say that. Book 2, I know there's a lot of criticism because of the political stuff. Some people just don't like political fantasy. I ate it up. I mean, did I? I don't know. I enjoyed it. And I enjoyed that they would try something and then they failed. And they tried something and then they failed. And this is their last chance. So they're going to get it, but then they fail. And it's just a lot of trying to rework things. And that questioning of morality of like, how far are you willing to go? What are you willing to do to accept reality when it's not ideal? I was surprised that I didn't hate the bad guys. Like, I enjoyed the insight into the bad guys. I felt like Zane was underwhelming. I felt like it was way too much of a stretch for the direction that was trying to go. Didn't find it believable. And I don't think Vin had real temptations. Like a lot of people, I hated the angst. I hate miscommunication so much. And I rely on it in the books that I've written, but I do everything possible to make multiple barriers as to why these people are not just saying what the flip they need to say. And that's what I was screaming at for the majority of this book, for like 2/3 of the second book. Was just say what you need to say. Gosh. I will say that the spy, they know that there's a spy for months, and it's one of their BFFs. And they're just casually like, yeah, we'll rule people out eventually, but we'll keep them all in these super secret meetings. It's all good. Excuse me? You don't care that there's a spy and one of your friends is dead? Cool, whatever. Now, who the spy turned out to be, I was surprised. I found that a successful delivery, and that's my review on book 2. Book 3, I kind of had a spoiler as to who would die and who would live, or I had very strong guesses, and I was disappointed, but not in a way that like leaves a bitter taste in my mouth, if that makes sense. The resolution was very messy, and I'm sitting in some ways being like, did all of these people die? Because I think they died, but he doesn't actually say. Like, we just get a scene of like, and these people, even though we had all of these factors going on, these people survived. I was like, wait a second, I'm confused. It was cool, even though I feel like it was over hinted at sometimes about the way the magic worked that people didn't understand. And the resolution, I mean, it's dark fantasy, so that means that in a lot of ways you have a bitter or bittersweet ending, and that's what it is. So I was told that Mistborn is actually his darkest trilogy, and so maybe I should still give Brandon Sanderson a try. I don't know, let me know. Anyway, just getting along. Moving on. I finished that trilogy. I don't know if I'm going to move on to Alloy of Law. If it's not quite as dark, let me know, and maybe I'll consider it. Moving on to another series. So my book, my debut book that is coming out, I'll include details down below. It is also fantasy. I wanted to read more in my genre. So I asked for comparables from my beta readers. Like, what's a book that you've read that kind of fits into this? And one was City of Bones, or Mortal Instruments. And I see why they say that, but I also am disgusted for the comparison. So that is one that I finished the first book. Honestly, it's the first book that I almost DNF'd. Like, I was cringing and I was forcing myself to continue with it. And that's sad to say. And I know some people love it. Not for me. So the first book, and then I read spoilers for the rest of the 6-book series, because that's how I roll. I want to know what happens, and I'm okay with spoilers, especially if I'm not going to continue on. So the themes that match my book is someone having their true identity hidden from them. They don't understand what they're capable of in the way of like powers and fantasy, and the dangers, and you know, there's family themes, there's romance. So I can see how that's comparable in that way, but it ends there kind of. You know, we have different creatures, all sorts of stuff, but I cannot stand the prose. There are way too many like awkward metaphors and similes and purple prose, and you know, the adverbs, so many adverbs. You don't need to say, "You're stupid," he yelled angrily. Okay, well, if he yelled it, and that's what he said, I'm pretty sure it was angrily, so you don't need to say the angrily. And if he said, "You're stupid," with an exclamation mark, I mean, like, I'm already assuming that he yelled. So there was a ton of that, and that drove me crazy. There was also a massive lack of interiority. So interiority is understanding the inside of the character and what makes them tick. And you don't get that. The main character is just very bland, and you know, she backhands someone and like you understand the logistics of it, but you don't understand in her head. Like there's no warning like, I can't believe he did that. He shouldn't have done that. I am just outraged. Like there's nothing going on here. It's just very much like, why did you do the thing? And I was like, what the heck? What? Okay. I also hated that there was so much angst in the way of, you know, very obvious, oh, your best friend loves you. You don't see that? Because it's literally like in the first couple of lines, like, oh, you like him, don't you? You're like, oh no, we're gonna have a whiny best friend that's secretly in love and she doesn't realize it. No, we're gonna do that. And we did that. And every character is unlikable in the book. Every character. They're so, the word I want to use is not one I want to use because I try not to swear. They're all jerks, all of them, especially the love interest, but even other people's like, oh my gosh, I hate her and I want to slap her because she's pretty. Come again? What? And I just can't side with people like that, so not my thing. I will say I did watch the movie at someone's recommendation and I surprisingly really enjoyed it. The movie is way better than the book, and that's a sad thing to say. But, you know, you don't get like these awkward descriptions and you don't get this lack of understanding of a character because that's taken out of the movie and they can make it better. And they make the characters so much more likable. They're not all brats hating each other and overly cocky guys that you're like, ugh, of course I don't like the bad boy theme, especially not the conceited boy thing. So the movie I do like better. It does lack on some things. I feel like the emotional investment and understanding of the dynamics of the wolf pack you lose out on, and kind of the sacrifice and moral questioning there. But I mean, that's kind of a side thing. Sadly, it did have to go, but you know, it was just a lot better. Even the romance was better, just all the things. Now I will say series wide, definitely not my cup of tea is the incest. So there are two in the main 6-book series. There are two incestuous relationships. One is a fake out, one is not. I am not there for that. Never once have I looked at my brother and thought, no, not there for that. So I will not be continuing on. I did promise a friend I would read a different book by Cassandra Clare that she thinks was done better. So we'll see. I still have my doubts. So the other one that I read based on comps from someone else is actually a sci-fi, and that is is it Pedicus Lore? I don't remember. I'll post on here the series name, but the first book is I Am Number 4, which is very different from mine in multiple ways. You know, you have a male protagonist where mine is female, but it is young adult and science fiction instead of fantasy, but it is about one alien race living on Earth, hiding from another race that is hunting them, which is kind of the premise for my fantasy. Is one botanical race of people that can look human is being hunted by another one, and they're kind of having this shadow war amongst humans that don't know what's going on. So I will say that there were definite flaws in this first book, but I did enjoy it still. And I think despite the egregious flaws, the fact that I am continuing on in the series, you know, that says something. The romance, again, not that great. Some things were a little stereotypical. I think, again, in like a hero's journey, who has to die, stupid mistakes that have to happen. There are definitely some stereotypes in the way of jocks and not like the other girls, and I don't know, that can get tiring. I think that the audiobook narrator was atrocious in doing female voices. That bugged me. But I think that the social dynamics and magic, like, I'm excited to learn more, because I think it very much hints at like things aren't as they seem, or they're bigger than they seem. And there are some plot holes or conveniences in the way that I'm asking, like, why do they think that, what is it 9? It's been a little while since I read that book. 9 kids can take over and repopulate an entire planet when it was destroyed with an entire planet of super powerful beings. Like, why can only 9? Well, how can they imagine that they could ever do it? But either way, I think the journey was cool. After reading the first book, I did watch the movie of I Am Number 4, and it was cringe, which is why they canceled the second book being made into a movie, which they'd planned on. It was so bad, guys. so bad. So if you've watched it, I apologize. Try the book. It's better, way better. I think they tried to make the movie more edgy and just did not hit the mark in so many ways. You lose so much of the importance of the characters and what they're going for. You make the mentor hated, where we actually love him in the book, and you know, the point at which people die and how they get out of things, like, it was just, I hated it so much. And it also gave away a major spoiler to the second book, because like really early on in the movie, they're like, oh yeah, and the reason so and so is here because they have a special purpose. You don't even find that out until like halfway through the second book, so it kind of spoils that for you. You know, not the most important point, but it is what it is. And I have actually read the second book, what is that, Power of Six, which is not what I thought it meant, and I think they do play with those numbers, because the kids are known by their number, but also how many kids there are in hiding. And there were some things that I was a little confused on. I did really hate that there was miscommunication that thrived very much, that like, I have this letter and I just can't get myself to read it for half of the book. And you're like, if you read it, you would know a super important thing, and you're like running for your life. So don't you think that matters more than regrets that are keeping you from that? Just, I hate miscommunication. So that made me cringe and frustrated me. It was cool to get multiple point of views, because once you get to the second book, kind of like my series again, you get a second point of view character. So it's not just this one person that we've been introduced to the world and the journey, and then crap hits a fan. Now we get to see it from two sides. I do feel like the redemption of one of the mentor characters was too easily earned, and I felt like there was a little bit too omniscience at one point, when they're like, oh, if we go here to the one place, then we'll have extra help. And I'm like, why would you think that? How would you know that? There's no way to know that. Supposedly, you think the exact opposite of that, because your knowledge is not that omniscient. So I feel like that was a little bit of a slip. But again, you know, I am intrigued enough to continue on. I think it's a 7-book series. I don't know if I'll read them all. We'll see how it goes. I'll let you know. But 2 books down out of that, and I will continue. Another series that I DNF'd, I did read the first 2 books, trying to move on. The first book is Beautiful Creatures, and I really did enjoy the setting. I've never really been to the South. I've been to Florida for like 3 days to go to the ocean and a strawberry festival, but you know, I haven't lived down in the South where they have twang in their accent and stuff. So I think there was a lot of charm in that. Sometimes there was maybe a little bit too much focus on the setting and side characters that didn't feel that important. But that's, you know, everyone has a different preference on how much of that sort of stuff you include. So felt like it was a little bit much for my taste, and the characters were very, very cringe in some ways. You know, how many times can you beat the reader over the head with, I am not a guy that cares about cheerleaders and the sluts with the makeup. No, I appreciate a smart girl who's not like the other girls. Yes, it was thick, and that girl was not like the other girls in many ways. So yeah, that was a little frustrating, making fun of fat people. Yeah, they did that in I Am Number 4 in the second book too. So anyway, that also, I struggle with fantasy that is very black and white. You are either good or you are evil. There is no in between. And while this book in the series does its best to try to gray the line, I think that's kind of the intention of it, I don't feel like it's necessarily done that well. You still have, right, a superpowered chosen one, which I try to avoid in my books. But, you know, people can have unique things about them, but I just get tired of that superpowered chosen one. And the angst is cringeworthy. The lack of communication is cringeworthy. Very convenient at times that they're just like, so-and-so isn't telling me something and I know it. Or we should be looking into something. And they're like, a month later. I'm like, you just let a whole month pass? People's lives are on the line. the fate of the world is on the line, and you're just like, we should look into that. And a month later, I'm just like, maybe this timeline is too long for how pressing the issues seem. Also, kind of the reveal of the bad guy was a little bit cringeworthy. Interesting the way they did it. I don't think it's very cohesive with the series, but like there's an entire scene that is blatant about like, this is the bad guy. And even the main character is like, this doesn't seem right. And then they move on from there. Never once does he investigate the super suspicious person. Why? Like, why? Like, they are intentionally stupid. So that frustrated me. That's what I'll say. Taking over the world plot, you know, that kind of stuff. I did give it a try because there were enough things that I liked about it that I wanted to give it a tester. So I went into book 2 and it didn't really get any better. A lot of miscommunication, keeping secrets that should just be said, especially if lives and fate and destiny and all that stuff are on the line. I sincerely thought that, is his name John, right? The new love interest, that it was gonna be a red herring, but no, he was exactly who he thought he was the entire time. I mean, a little bit, you know, we get more details on him, but things are as they seem to be, so it wasn't very twisty for me. You know what, the reason that I decided to read that is because I actually had the physical copy of this book, and I realized that I had not waited till that part in the audiobook, and it was like, you know, a little excerpt from the beginning of the second book, and I was like, ooh, we're gonna learn more about the succubus and incubus. Sorry, my dog's making weird noises. And what's special about Ethan, because we know something special. And so when we find out what's special about him, I don't know, it didn't feel as cool as I thought it would be. The journey down under, not Australia, like down in the secret world, a little too convenient with the old lady, and just, I don't know. It also took away the risk when the one bad guy that we're afraid of getting killed in the specifics of the magic, that, oh, well, they're no longer bad. As a punishment for being good, they're now good. It takes away any risk. They try to make it like, oh, but there might still be a risk because it might not be complete. And just, I couldn't continue on. I did read the synopsis for the rest of the series, and I just don't think I would enjoy it more. So, not the worst I've read was not City of Bones. I will say City of Bones, like, I did like the premise of like angels and demons in combination with other things like werewolves and vampires and that kind of stuff. Also in the City of Bones movie, it's ridiculous that they hint at the vampire thing and that one of the characters is changing, and they're just like, oh, vampire bite, oh, you're changing, I'm not gonna say anything, nothing's going on. Like, I hate it when there's a blatant thing that they're just like, we're gonna wait until it's convenient for the plot to address that. You gotta be more subtle if that's what you're gonna do. So another one that was recommended to me is Truthwitch. I have only read book 1. I think there are 4 in this series, and I will be continuing on. I enjoyed it enough. So this is more of, not modern, how is it classified? I don't know. There is a lot of political intrigue. There is a lot of magic systems going on. And what I really like is that there is a lot of foreboding of catastrophic failure that happens in the magic system. Like, something is wrong. And we know that from pretty early on in the book. But like, we know that it's building up. I don't know that it's completely satisfying as a standalone, but then again, I guess it's good enough that it makes me want to continue reading on in the series. But I do like, you know, the love interest doesn't come too easy. It was a little frustrating, the whole like angstiness, but not horrible, just a little bit more than I like. I will say that a complaint that other readers have had when I read reviews and watched reviews, I echo that the world building could be done better. It is a very rich world, very immersive, but you just kind of get thrown into the beginning of it, and it takes a while to understand the context and where you even are. So that's kind of frustrating, that you're kind of made to work it out and it's hard to focus. But once I got past that, once we warmed up in the book, some things are still a little hazy from kind of that. It feels like the world is too big for the story, is the way that I describe it. In that you've got all of these kingdoms and these empires, and I'm not constantly looking at a map and trying to remember, so it can be confusing. It is, in a lot of ways, a very elemental magic system. So you've got people that control the wind, and there are different kind of levelties or specialties within those elements. So that's kind of cool. And it's called the Truthwitch. It's because there is one person in the world who is a Truthwitch, and she's trying to hide her identity. And people are coming after her because they want someone who can decipher whether another political party is telling the truth or not. So it's got some good intrigue about who's really the good guy, who's really the bad guy. Because of the omniscience, you as a reader know, like, okay, no, he's a good guy, even though this main character thinks he's a bad guy. And you know what? By the end of it, we still don't know. And how many of these people are morally gray? How many people will have a redemption where right now they're more the bad guy, but you realize like, he's got some moral questions ahead of him and things might just take a turn. So I think that there's some good intrigue, there's some good characters, interiority, good magic. I'm excited to see, and I understand some of the choices that will be faced by the main characters. There is very much, there's a romance, but just as equal, if not more, is a strong female friendship, and you already know that that is going to be severely tested, though I do think it is very convenient that for ride or die friendship, thread sisters, as they call them, that one is kind of being called to the dark side. That's the hint there, is that they will be, and that they're being thrown into that world, but they don't say anything to the other one. Again, people just need to say things. You just need to be honest, especially to people you care about, especially when the stakes are high. So I think the resolution was pretty nice where it was. The pacing was good. I actually didn't want to like this book, but I did like it. So I'll continue on in the series. So those are the fiction commercially available books that I can think of having read. Let me know your thoughts, if you have recommendations, what you thought of these books. I hope I wasn't too vague or spoilery. Sorry if I was. This is my first time posting this kind. I usually do author videos on my process as I strive to become a multi-genre hybrid author. I will be publishing my first book soon, super soon. So stay tuned, subscribe to this channel, and also go check out my newsletter. I'm going to be putting up a free short story as a thank you for subscribing there. Thank you for joining me. Definitely, put my book, Cedar Shadow Wars, on your TBR list. And I appreciate your support on this channel. And if you are an author and want your book reviewed, you know what? Reach out to me. Maybe I will. So I will see you around, the end of the year, beginning of next year, for a wrap up of the next several months worth of books that I read. So enjoy your day, keep reading, have a good one. Bye.